Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, well, this is one of my solo episodes, so I'm here by myself. This is the next installment of my J-Horror Journal. And you know what that means if you've been listening along? We're talking more Death Forest. This time we are back for Death Forest 3, which came out in 2015. Next entry in this 5-film series, all based off a video game, which, as we set up in the first episode of this, was based on another indie video game from America. So it all kind of goes back to Slender Man. You can circle back for that episode if you want the whole history of this franchise. So yeah, we're on film 3 of 5. And I was curious the direction it would go. The first one was, a little dull, a little slow. Kind of just told the plot of the game with some extra stuff added in. The second one, it kind of tried to go in a different direction. It tried to do the whole school bullying angle on things, with a drama club that was having a retreat in the woods at an abandoned school. They got a lot of work out of the school setting, which was super fun. Better visuals, better effects. So I was curious from 3 on where we would be going, if we were going to kind of keep this rising action, or will they start to try to give backstory on the ghosts, or how are we going to unravel this knot that they're kind of slowly building. If you're a general podcast listener, you will probably have heard our episode on the things that scare us, the movies that have scared us the most over the years. Write in, let us know what scares you, what movies creep you out, what movies sit with you for way too longer than they should. And if you're not cool with sharing that with us, if you've listened to that episode, write in and tell us your crazy jigsaw level trap that you would construct to torment us. I'm, of course, certain that mine would involve bugs in some way, and I absolutely wouldn't be able to do it. It would be but another victim for the jigsaw killer. And I thought, since this is J-horror related, we're just focusing all things J-horror on this little side series, there's some cool releases in the pipeline. I thought I would just put out there for people to be on the lookout if you're a collector like me. It should be out by the time this episode drops, I do believe. If not, it'll be the week of. Arrow is putting out a box set, J-Horror Rising. Been super excited for this. I think a lot of people have been, especially if you're a fan of that original wave of J-horror. This is just kind of an eclectic mishmash box set of some early J-horror films that are iconic. I'm so sure some are a little better known than others, but it's a great little collection. It's got Shikoku, Isola, Inugami, St. John's Wort, Persona, and then actually 2 features from a legend of this podcast and director we both super praise a ton, Koji Shiraishi. We've got one of his more studio-based efforts, Carve, the Slipmouth Woman, and then probably one of his greatest films of all time, and truly an epic of found footage, mockumentary-style filmmaking, Nori the Curse. Now, I've already seen online, I'm sure a lot of people are super excited about this just for Noroi. It is streaming on Shudder, so it's more accessible now than it has been in the past. But man, just to finally have this on Blu-ray, it's such a huge film. I think it's one of the greatest found footage films ever made. Super cool that it's finally getting out there in the West where you can buy it and own it. I don't know if they're going to later do maybe some standalone releases from this box set. But I'm sure Noroi would be one of the big ones a lot of people would like to pick up. So hopefully this does well for them. Hopefully we'll get, a J-Horror Rising Volume 2, 3, just, see how far we can go with it. There's plenty of films to pull from, as this little side series will show as we keep going, and man, I love it. I eat it all up. It's so great. I pre-ordered mine through Grindhouse Video. That's one of the places I like to use a ton. You can go there and check it out, pick it up from them. I'm sure it's listed any other retailer you want to get at it. I'm also a big fan of Diabolic DVD, and of course you can always order Terracotta Releasing. They're pretty cool. I think they mostly focus on UK, but definitely good for some imports from there too. And then you can always order it direct from Arrow, so go show that some love if you're a collector and be on the watch out for that. But that's not all. Next month, I think right now it's street dated for like the middle of the month, like November 19th or so. Arrow is also putting out the original Tomie film. Super iconic film series, kind of like, you would put it in the tier of like maybe one of J-horror's like Freddy or Jason, a very iconic like character that's reoccurring. From the mind of Junji Ito, probably the godfather of like horror manga in general. Um, Super great. There's a ton of those films. I always hoped maybe they would be like a box set or something, but it's a start to have the first one out on Blu-ray. So maybe that will lead to the rest. I don't know. Maybe once they get kind of dipped in quality, they can just bundle those as a set. We'll see. But definitely be on the lookout for that if you dig Junji Ito, J-horror, any of that kind of stuff. The more we support these releases, the more we'll see more of that stuff trickle out there. And of course, I guess another thing to talk about in the realm of like J-horror news type things this month, speaking of Junji Ito, there is Adult Swim's anime adaptation of Uzumaki, which was much anticipated, much much praised from the trailer and the kind of like samples they were putting out there. And if you're not up on the story of what's going on with that, it was delayed. They worked on it for about 5 years, and there's only, I think 4 episodes. The first episode was just amazing, like almost near perfect adaptation. Some of the prior film and anime adaptations of Junji Ito stuff, usually they don't go quite as well. They don't come out quite as perfect as the manga. And he often gets like kind of the same thing as Lovecraft, where people say his stuff is like unfilmable, unanimatable. And I think a lot of us on that first episode, we really thought that this Uzumaki edition was gonna like show everyone wrong. And then the second episode came out. And so if you're not up on the drama about this, the second episode was animated by a different studio. Completely different team worked on it, even different director leading the animation. And it was just complete garbage. I mean, there was like really terrible 3D CG where it looked like character models were just sliding across a background, even though they're supposed to be walking. Huge drop in quality. And it's almost like a joke now at this point that it's like, man, just something about adapting Junji Ito's works must be like cursed or something. I don't know. But I haven't watched it all. I've kind of waiting myself to go like the whole 4 episodes in one shot. But I think like one of the head producers came out and talked about it and basically said they got put into a position where they lost a lot of the money they had that they could work on it. They kind of like started once, had to restart again. All this behind the scenes drama, and basically they got put into a position where they could just cancel the project. They could release like the one good first episode and be like, that's all we got, sorry guys. Or they could rush to finish the whole project and put the whole thing out, knowing that some of the latter episodes are going to be like much less quality than that first one. And they went with that final option. They felt that, like, so many people had put time and work and effort into making this that it did need to come out there. Now, was that the right decision? I don't know. I can leave that to you to decide. As a diehard anime fan, you'll know if you've listened regularly to the podcast. I'm no stranger to stuff that was a really cool animation project just being kind of canceled and drizzled out. A famous one I really think of from the 80s is the Devilman OVA series, which those are much beloved and much celebrated. There's only 2 episodes. Each volume was doing about 1 volume of the manga, adapted in about like 45 minutes to an hour. So all told, there should have been like maybe 5 episodes of that, but they were kind of just like a lot of OVAs in the 80s. They were going like episode to episode, and the sales of one would fund the next. So we got the first 2, and then it kind of trickled up, and that's the end of it. There never was a complete adaptation in that version, which sucks. But it is what it is. There's 2 great episodes that you can go and watch and enjoy. And eventually, all these years later, we got something like Devilman Crybaby that finally did adapt the entire manga start to finish. It's just a shame, though, because that 80s one is like faithful to the style, faithful to the tone. Like, it's a 1-to-1 almost reproduction of the manga. So, If you're ever interested in stuff like that and you've never seen the old Devilman OVAs, go and check that out because it's super cool. But I think all that said, let's get into Death Force 3 now. Alright, so Death Forest 3, also known as Death Forest Forbidden Forest 3. 2015, this is directed by Yasutake Torii. He doesn't have a lot of credits to his name. It's mostly J-horror related stuff that seems like smaller, direct-to-video. He's going to be our director for the 4th entry when we move on there. He's got some other stuff I recognize that are a little on the weirder side, but fun. Stuff like he did one of the Hanako of the Toilet films, Hanako vs. Yosuke. He did a version of the Sugisawa Village urban legend as an adaptation. I think he did a Hitori Kakurenbo film, which is like the whole like hide and seek urban legend thing. Yeah, so kind of one of our guys to be in that pocket of like low budget, not that great, but it exists and it's there, J-horror. So the third film, it picks up an undetermined time after the last one. We're not really following that cast anymore. If you've paid attention to the prior two, you know our through line is Kazuki Uchida. He is an investigative reporter, a journalist, and he had stumbled on this like phenomenon in Aokigahara, where these strange spirits seem to stalk and devour and murder anyone that happens upon their path at a certain little area that they reside in. He spent the last two films investigating that. Initially, his impetus was his sister going missing and was trying to find her. And then, since encountering these entities, he continues to dig into it and try to uncover the truth of what's going on. Which, thus far, 2 films in, is almost nothing. We've been drip-fed none of like the backstory or anything like that. So in this third film, we focus on a new lead character, because again, Kazuki's kind of always our man in the background. So this time we are with Mayu Uchida, and she's played by Narumi Uno. She has a few film credits to her name. Kind of surprised. She was like really good in this film, like gave a good performance. I could see her doing a lot more, but I hadn't recognized any of the other films she appeared in. Hitokoa was the one I've heard of. It's like an anthology of like creepy stories, and she appears in one of the segments there. But she's super cute. She's our lead for this film. We quickly get her situation right out of the gate as the film begins. She lives with her mother in the countryside near Aokigahara, and currently her mother has remarried. Their stepfather is the very stereotypical, like, gets blackout drunk, and shouts, raves about the house, and unfortunately is very and exceedingly abusive both to the mother and Mayu. So right out of the gate, we're kind of getting a different tone with this film, where the first two were very just like, throw some teens into the woods, ghosts come after them, antics ensue. And this one, like, the cameras seem a little higher quality, maybe about on par with the second one still. They sometimes try to do these POV shots that look a little lower quality. I don't know if that was just a style thing that didn't pan out right or what, but yeah, we're trying to do this whole like domestic violence angle. So after the stepfather's kind of, shouting at them, knocking them around some, Mayu's had her fill of it, and she resolves that with some of her friends, she's going to run away, catch the bus to Tokyo, and go and stay with her uncle, who is Kazuki. So then we cut to him, actually, and pick up with what he's been up to, which is, of course, looking into Yoshie and the other weird phantoms that exist in the forest. He meets one of his contacts again. They kind of go over some of the things. And again, Kazuki, played by Dajiro Kawaoka. He actually has a lot of film credits to his name. Summertime Machine Blues, which is a cool like time travel film. He even has an appearance in the like early 2000s Boogie Pop and Others live action flick, which is cool. And I do believe he's even had some like tokusatsu stuff, an appearance in like I think maybe a Super Sentai series if I recall correctly. So yeah, he's kind of going over things. He's starting to lose his cool a little bit. He's getting a little crazy at this point. Because is this real? Is this something he's been imagining? What's going on? But his contact reveals an old photo of a young woman, and it appears to resemble Yoshie. And they think they've kind of stumbled onto like the real life person that she was before she became this crazy floating head that chomps people apart phantom. And so they're reviewing their information, they're talking about things, and Kazuki's just kind of trying to plot his next move at this point. We catch back up with Mayu. She is out with her friends, and it's it's one of those things where it's like it's the most simple plan in the world. It's her and then like two dudes, two girls. They're gonna go to the train station, catch the train, go to Tokyo. And there's a great moment like where they go to this little like abandoned tunnel that's near their home, and the friends kind of just look after Mayu, and they're very sweet, and it's very like it's a good heartwarming moment for this film to kind of like build up the cast, whether it's all new people. Her girlfriends, they're getting out makeup and helping to like cover the bruises she has. The dudes are being very encouraging of her, trying to run away and get away from this domestic violence that's going on. So once they treat Mayu, they make their way toward the train station, and they get delayed reaching the station by this old woman they encounter that's a little creepy. Now we've seen her in some of the other films. It's usually the credits. She's only credited as mysterious old woman. We don't really know what her deal is. I think in the first film she showed up at the little like roadside restaurant, and then in the second film, when Kazuki was reviewing some of the photos, it seemed like she was creeping on in the background, and then she vanished. This woman seems to have some connection to Yoshie. Whenever Mayu interacts with her, she starts to get like visions and kind of some weird headaches, and she keeps envisioning Yoshie coming in to, devour her. But it's just the old woman there, so don't really know what's up with that yet. And in their confusion and delay, they don't make it to the station in time. The last train of night to go to Tokyo departs, and their plans kind of fizzled. So they, are debating about what to do. They try to get Mayu to just stay with one of them till the morning, catch a train, and she's very worried about the stepfather kind of pursuing and trying to find her once he realizes she ran away and like bolted out of the home. So at the behest of one of the dudes, they're like, we can just cut through the forest, go over this ridge, and there's a bus station. If we catch the bus there, it'll get us to the next station, and we can pick back up with the train and get to Tokyo. A little convoluted, but again, this is Death Forest, and we need a reason to go into the forest. So there you go. So Mayu and her friends set out into the forest to make their way over this ridge. And meanwhile, back at home, Mayu's mother and stepfather have noticed that she's ran out. And in a fit of rage, the stepfather kind of flies off and goes about trying to find her to bring her back home. So, of course, upset, her mother calls Kazuki, checks in with him, and is like, hey, Mayu ran away, this is what happened. I'm worried for her safety. She was gonna catch a train, but it's really late at night. And he sort of puts the pieces together of like, if she's not on that train, they might try to go through the forest. If they go through the forest, she could be the next target for these creatures. So he starts booking it up that way to try to intercept them and do what he can to help. And this middle kind of passage of the film is where it gets very, very typical for the franchise, I would say. We get the whole, like, they're wandering through a tunnel, it's dark, it's creepy. They come out the other side, one of the dudes is, like, lingering at the tunnel, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna take some ghost photos, and he's doing the whole, like, camera flash trick. And when doing so, he starts to capture some of the stalkers in the tunnel, like they're approaching. And they do the good, like, I guess you would call it the lights out gimmick, where, like, there's the flash, the thing is there, there's the flash, the thing is closer. It gets closer, and then they kind of jump him. And so outside of the tunnel, his friends hear him screaming, they come running in looking for him. And when they find him, they find a swarm of stalkers, kind of tearing apart his body. And Yoshie, like, spits out his arm down onto the ground. Of course, so, frightened, they begin to run and flee in terror through the woods. And this is like where I should maybe talk about the kills in this film, because it's a little, they made a choice, and I don't know if it's a good choice, but so for this film, like, none of the kills are on screen. They all happen off screen. And that's not to say there's no gore at all. You'll often see the aftermath, like the blood everywhere, wayward body parts sticking somewhere, but the actual, like, moment of killing each time, the camera will either, like, quick cut away, or it happened, like, off screen. We're following another character, and then they stumble on the chaos after it's over. And that's kind of like one of the faults for this one for sure. It makes it a lot lesser than the prior two that didn't shy away at all from showing anything. So that's a bit of a downturn. I don't know if they were trying to go for, like, a more mainstream appeal, get, like, the younger crowds in. I feel like if you're 2 films into the franchise, you're probably already used to what it is. But you never know. So that was a decision. I know I'm not a fan of it, but you can see how it sits with you. Big thing though, Yoshie, her effects are, like, way worse. I don't know what happened. Like, in the first one, it was pretty low budget, and you kind of expected it because it looks low budget in the game. But the second one, like, they really imposed her well in the second film, where she felt like she was there, and you kind of forget the fact that it's like a superimposed video trick. But here it's a little more poorly blended, a little less believable, and I'm not sure why they backslid on it, but maybe they had less of a budget. You never know. There's not a lot of info about this as far as, like, behind the scenes stuff, like the budgets or any production notes or things like that. So eventually Kazuki makes it up to where his aunt is staying in that little part of town. And he runs into one of Mayu's friends. It was one of the ones that she was with them when they were going to the train station, but she decided not to go hiking through the woods with them. And so she kind of updates Kazuki on what's going on and joins him as he's trying to drive and catch up to them. Now, meanwhile, Mayu and our other 2 survivors, they are kind of running wildly through the woods. They've pieced together now that the light is, like, their one tool is protection, so they're using their camera to take photos and, like, flash them and repulse them. And literally just doing everything they can do to survive and make it there. And eventually they reach another tunnel, and they're kind of cornered by Yoshie and her minions. Or are they her minions? We don't really know. There's no, like, hierarchy of how these things work, but they seem to, like, move at the behest of her, so... And they do this sort of fake-out thing where we get a bright light coming from the other direction, and you think it's Kazuki coming to save the day, but then we fade from that, and we don't really follow up with what happened. It cuts to Kazuki, and he's still investigating, looking for stuff. He's trying to call Mayu and get a hold of her, but he's not getting any answer. We pick back up with Mayu, and we learn that she was actually found by the stepfather. And he has knocked her out, knocked the main dude out that was with them, has them tied up in the back of his van, and he's driving them to Tokyo. And he decides if she wants to run away to Tokyo so bad, he will take her there and show her what it's like in Tokyo. She kind of fumbles and tries to get her phone out to notify Kazuki of what's going on, but he slams on the brakes, she loses control of it, and he intercepts it and throws it out the window. So meanwhile, eventually, Kazuki finds the phone on the side of the road, and they sort of realize what happens. He checks in with his sister, I guess, the mother of Mayu, and she sort of reveals that, this dude that she's with, he had like an apartment in Tokyo that he would like go and stay in when he would go there for like work or stuff like that. And so they kind of think that's where they're going. So then this immediately sets up the question that I kind of posed in one of the other episodes, which is like, are these things confined to the forest, or can they go beyond them? And will we get, Yoshie in Tokyo? And the answer to that is apparently, once they're kind of, someone's been cursed and they're on about them, they will go to whatever lengths to get them and kill them that they can. So Mayu comes to, and she's in this like really dingy, ran down apartment. The windows are all like newspapered up and stuff. The stepfather's there. He's getting a little creepy. He's like hitting her around. He starts to get a little rapey acting, which I guess is par for the course for this kind of plot. But he's out of booze, so he goes out to try to get some drinks. And since they're both tied up, he assumes it's okay. The other dude, he's very unimportant. He kind of almost seems like he would be a love interest, but they don't dwell on it. His name is Yuki. But he works with Mayu to get them both free, and they decide that they're gonna like steal a flashlight and try to go find some safety. She thinks to like grab the phone and call Kazuki. He lets them know he's on his way. He fears that the ghost may be after them, so he tells them basically to get out of the house and run, and do all they can to find somewhere with a lot of lights, and stay in the light and stay out of the darkness. So just as they're about to bolt with flashlights in hand, the stepfather comes back and he's enraged at them. It looks like it's going to be this big confrontation, but then a wave of stalkers show up, owing to Kazuki's theory that they would follow them. And in the chaos, they manage to get free and escape, as he is assaulted by the stalkers and then ultimately gets decapitated by Yoshie, who like zooms down from the sky and chomps his head off. So then we fall into like our usual climax of these films. They're running from Yoshie through the streets of Tokyo rapidly, trying to find anywhere with some lights, and they eventually stumble onto a baseball field. So this was kind of Kazuki's plan to get them here to this location where they have a ton of like lights that can turn on. And he had called ahead to his contact to get him to go there and get the lights all on and have everything all lit up really brightly. So we get this final showdown where he arrives, he links up with Mayu, she's super happy that he's there, and the three of them charge out into the center of the baseball field, and we get this like, it owes to the video game roots because it feels like a boss fight. They're kind of in a little circle together in the middle of the baseball field, and they're spinning around, and Kazuki has his camera, and Yoshie will try to like dart in to grab one of them, and then he'll spin and like catch her with the camera and flash and repulse her and knock her back. And it builds up and it builds up till finally she snatches Yuki, and it seems like she's gonna chomp his head off, but at that exact moment they get the lights on, and all the floodlights of the baseball stadium blast into the center, and it starts to like burn Yoshie, and she burns up and just vanishes, leaving behind Yuki, who is a little bloody, a little slimy, but seems like he's gonna be okay. In the ensuing chaos, Kazuki's contact he's been working at gets jumped by some of the stalkers, but his fate's a little ambiguous, but they all do seem to be repulsed by the light of the big floodlights, and everyone is safe and the day is saved. So we get a little coda scene where Kazuki is with Mayu, and he reunites her with her mom, and they're very happy, and Kazuki still, though, is left with, like, what's the deal with these ghosts? What's going on? I still don't know. Seems they can leave the forest. It seems light is their weakness. And who's that old woman that's creeping around now? We don't know. So he goes to catch back up with his contact, but finds him missing. Instead, he meets this mysterious woman that was also one of, like, the dude's contacts. Kind of gives the vibes like maybe she's psychic or, I don't know, maybe spiritual in some way and has some more information about what's going on. And she kind of basically just offers the same thing to work with Kazuki if he needs help. But the mystery remains. We kind of finish on some drone shots, like sweeping and soaring through the dimly lit forest at night. And then we hear the like gurgling sounds of Yoshie, implying that she's kind of reforming or that she's still alive and still exists there in the forest. And that whatever they did, it merely stopped her. It didn't kill her in any kind of way. And then the credits roll, and that's the end. It's another like very tight. I think this one is about 64 minutes or something like that. Like they rarely go beyond that. I don't know if there's like a mandate they have to be that long or. I did take a peek to the next one and see that it was 70 minutes, so it looks like maybe I don't know, we're gonna get more world building or what, but yeah, so this is Death Forest 3. And it's a little odd as far as like where it sits in the franchise for me so far. So like the first one delivered on adapting the game, but it was super low budget, super cheap, barely had a story. It was really just like throw kids into the woods and get them killed. Um, the second one really upped the ante with like better camera work, better effects. It was still a little inconsequential with like, oh, here's some like school kids and they run up against them. But it was at least entertaining to watch, which was cool. And this third one here, like, in some ways it's better than one, but I don't know if it's as good as two. But there is things I like about it more than the second one. Like, I think it's cool to build more of a story, but I also think that with like 64 minutes doing this whole domestic violence plot, they didn't have enough time to sell it or get you like invested in it. And then it takes a lot of time from like the ghost and J horror action part, so we're probably less ghost action in this one than either of the prior two. And all of that's replaced with the drama of the stepfather being like a complete sleazebag and abusive and all this stuff. Um, and we don't really get the time to develop any of the characters. So like Mayu, like, I mean, you're gonna sympathize with her because of what you see her go through, but she's as interchangeable as any of the other characters at this point. And even sort of our like through line Kazuki, we really don't know a ton about him still, other than his obsession with this haunting, and I guess in this one we find out he has a sister and a niece, but the kills definitely a downturn. The fact that we don't see any, they all happen off screen. It's a little lame. The special effects, especially with Yoshie as a floating head, like takes a turn for the worse. Gets a bit cheesier. I thought a lot about, and of course I would think about a Sono film, but I thought a lot about one of his films, Exute, the also known as like hair extensions. That one also kind of mixes like a typical J horror plot with like a domestic violence story. But that film is also like a good length of time long. It runs for about 108 minutes, so they have a lot more time to like flesh that out, build the like horror part, but also build the like family drama part. And in that instance, in that film, it felt a lot more natural and like interweaved with what was going on, to give you a good payoff in the end. I mean, and this one, it has a payoff in the end. There is a good resolution. The deadbeat stepfather gets what's coming to him by way of J horror ghost. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I don't know. But we did get our creatures to Tokyo, which is fun. Hopefully that means that in one of the subsequent films they will exploit that further. But otherwise, that's this film. I gave it a 3.5, which I'm going to say is being generous. I think I gave the original 3, and I gave the second one 4. This one's kind of in the middle, so 3.5 feels right. Also, a part of me kind of just wants to give it a 2 because it was a little bit of a hot mess. But otherwise, it's everything you know for this franchise. They did some cool stuff with the music in this one. We've got that one theme song that's like pulled from the game. That's usually like your tell that the ghosts are getting near. During the opening credits, they kind of remix it and add in some like more modern sounding like drums and then like the industrial rock thing going on with it. That sounded pretty cool. Otherwise, it is what it is. This is, a low budget J horror series. I would be surprised if these went to theater. They just have the vibe of like a direct to video series. And again, there's not a lot of, production release info out there about them, so who knows where that is. But we got 2 more, and we will keep going, and I will finish this for good or ill, and then we'll move on to cooler things, I promise. And yeah, so that we look forward to the 4th one, look forward to the 5th one. Will we learn the backstory of Yoshie and what's going on? We shall see. Otherwise, write in. Tell me what you've been watching. Tell me what you've been checking out, especially for October, this Halloween time. I'm keeping up with the 1 film a day for the Horror Gives Back challenge. So I'm excited to reach the end of the month and have seen at least 31 awesome horror films. I won't talk about them over here. I'll save those to talk about with Jason so we can bounce back and forth off of each other. But yeah, look forward to more of these. Look forward to... we'll definitely get into some better and maybe some more interesting films with a little bit more to discuss or talk about. These are pretty lean on plot and pretty lean on any kind of like interpretations or theories or thoughts or messages. So they just kind of are what they are, and that's fine. And you know what? I do respect them for that. Not every film needs to be like some magnum opus that's going to change the way you think about the world. Sometimes you just need a floating J-horror ghost head to bite people in half. And that's fine, and that's cool. So all that said, look forward to our next full episode. We're going to be talking about the Masters of Horror franchise, which was definitely a moment for all of us back in the day when it came out. And now it's just kind of just a little memory that pops up when you see it streaming places. And we're going to maybe draft, like if there was a new season, who would be the directors on it. And that should be super fun. Looking forward to that. And you can bet as the J-horror guy, I'll at least probably try to squeeze in 1 person from my picks to cater to that. Otherwise, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me on this journey as we check out all the Death Forest films. And if you've seen any of these or you've decided to go check one out in wake of me talking about them, write in and let me know what you think on these. Are they worth it? Are they worth the time? Am I just filling minutes with hot air about something that's completely unremarkable? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where it all charts out by the 5th film. But otherwise, you can hit us up on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, email us at genreexposure@gmail.com. Let us know how you're doing. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying your October times, having fun, getting into cool stuff, being spooked, spooking others, embracing and enjoying all the lovely things that are and revolve around Halloween. But all that being said, you have been listening to Genre Exposure, and have a very happy Halloween.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.